Hello guys, we have Raspberry Pi 3, which is Model 3 basically, and Raspberry Pi Model 4 in front of us. So you can see the both the boards here. So let us talk about the major differences between them. So if you go to the Raspberry Pi 3 Model B, it has a quad-core 62-bit Broadcom BCM2837 processor. This is the processor, okay, and its operating frequency is 1.2 gigahertz, and it is a ARM Cortex A53 chipset. Now if you see here on the Raspberry Pi 4, okay, we have 1.5 gigahertz operating frequency processor, which is again a quad core 64-bit, and it is BCM 2711 chipset. Okay, so this is a ARM Cortex A72 SoC. So this has A53 and this has A72, which is a major jump. Okay, and then if you see the difference here with respect to the USB ports, on the old Raspberry Pi 3, we have 4 USB 2.0 ports on the left side. Okay, if you see on Raspberry Pi 4, you have USB 3.0 port, two USB 3.0 ports, and two USB 2.0. So that's another major difference, and you can also see the location of 2.0 and 3.0 got swapped with respect to the Ethernet connector. So this is the Ethernet connector on 3.0, whereas this is the Ethernet connector on Raspberry Pi 4. So Raspberry Pi 3 supports 10 by 100 Mbps Ethernet, whereas if you come to the Raspberry Pi 4, it supports 1 gigabit Ethernet, which is a full gigabit Ethernet. So very important feature, right? And then if you see here on the Raspberry Pi 3, you do not have the RAM on the top. So if you switch the board, you can see here the RAM is on the bottom. Okay, whereas if we see Raspberry Pi 4, the RAM is on the top. Okay, so for Raspberry Pi 3, we have LPDDR2 support, whereas Raspberry Pi 4 supports LPDDR4, which is another important thing. And if you see the Raspberry Pi 3, this supports up to 1 GB of LPDDR2, whereas this supports different variants like 2 GB, 4 GB, 8 GB. So the processing power of Pi 4 is definitely more, right? And then if you see another major difference, so you can see this is the HDMI port on Raspberry Pi, which is a the bigger HDMI port, and you have micro HDMI, two micro HDMI ports. That means you can connect two monitors here, whereas you can connect one monitor here on the HDMI port. So that's one major difference. And audio port, the composite audio port is the same. There's no change. And if you see the MIPI CSI, the camera port on Raspberry Pi 3 and Raspberry Pi 4, it's the same. And if you see the MIPI DSI display, it's the same. So the location also hasn't changed. And another important point on the wireless side of it, if you see here on the wireless side, we have the major chipsets here, and then the antennas here. So whereas this is the chipset here, both the boards supports 802.11 A by B by and then AC as well, whereas Bluetooth wise, Raspberry Pi 2 supports 4.2, whereas Raspberry Pi 4 supports 5.0. So Bluetooth 5.0 is an additional one. And if we talk about the power input, if you see here, this is the micro USB port you have here. If you come here, this is a Type-C port. So 2 points which we are covering with the Type-C port here. One is more power handling capacity, power input, more current. Basically, it goes up to 3 amps, right? So you are giving more power input, more processing capability of the board. So USB 3.0 covers that aspect. If we come to the GPU expander, okay, so it's the same on both the boards. So there is no difference there. So if we see The SD card. So SD card is again it's a micro SD card on the bottom for both these boards. You can see here this side on the bottom, like you can just twist it. You can see the micro SD card on the bottom. So overall, if you see, the HDMI ports are different, Ethernet ports are different. Raspberry Pi is the Raspberry Pi 4 is an advanced version of Raspberry Pi 3 with features, and it supports 4K Ethernet, which is a very important thing. Sorry, 4K display over this HDMI, which is a very important thing for the Raspberry Pi 4 board. So if you see overall, if you are switching to the Raspberry Pi 4, you might have to shell that additional bucks to get the board, and these days Raspberry Pi costs have increased as well. So these are the high level differences between these two boards. Please post if you have any questions. Thank you.